The S&P 500, the Nasdaq 100, that's what we're discussing here on the day. Now, when we look at this action, you can clearly see the lower highs that we're putting in here on the Nasdaq on the daily time frame, and now the lower lows. We also are mounting and breaking below the 200 SMA on the daily. You zoom into about the 2-hour chart, and you can actually see that we're getting multiple projections of this level as well. Not what you want to see here on the broad markets. You go to something like the S&P 500. Now, this we got a little bit earlier, right? We've been tracking this a little bit more. The 100. The 200 SMA, we broke it last week, right? We broke down. We're pushing back into our key level down here. We mentioned from yesterday as well, coming back down to 41.17, also mentioned there in the newsletter, okay? So when we look at this action, it's very concerning. Not to mention what's also happening around the world. We have now sending troops into the Middle East into specific areas that don't want to stumble or misinterpret those words there. Okay, now we're not specifically attacking or doing anything like that, but it looks like things are definitely heating up. You look at what's happening right now in Syria, and we've had 16 different attacks so far on U.S. troops that are clearly backed by Iran forces, or at least Iranian groups, right? So things are definitely heating up here. And this number has actually jumped up to around 19, I believe, as of right now. So that's not good news. Okay, on top of this, right, clearly breaking down not good behavior. Then going a little bit further, you have Amazon earnings, right? Amazon earnings in the after hours. You saw an initial little jump up, right? Initial jump up here, and then rejected back down after they released their call and started doing their statement, pushing back down. Intel is looking like the only thing that's relatively green, but like we mentioned on Intel, it's one of the worst semiconductor names, and I don't think it's going to be the thing that holds the market up. So as we look at the broad market, there's a lot of warning signs and signs of caution. Also jumping into something like the SPY. What did we mention yesterday? If you're not following the channel, I don't know what to say. When you look at these levels, you're coming back down. It's grinding below the 90-minute on the 2-hour, 15-minute, everything in between. You're pushing down. Now, the major support's down at 410, but we said 410 to 412 is where you have this support. Now, we zoom out to something like the 4-hour, and you get a little bit more clear reason as to why. Right, we grab this, bring it out to here. As you can see, the 410 level has been tested up multiple times, right? You can see, but we've also had some wicks into this 415 to 412 area as well, coming into this area, as you can see right there. And under this, you're back into the territory of most likely retesting that 400 region. So now the discussion becomes is, when does the bleeding subside? Or what can stop the bleeding? Now, we have some big news that will be announced tomorrow regarding inflation. And, the Fed says this is the most important track of inflation and the data that you have to be reading the most. So we got to get to that here in a second. But what I am going to do right now, I'm going to ask you to do two things. Consider liking and subscribing down below. I'll also say the Twitter link is down below if you want to see updates off the YouTube channel, right? I can give you charts. I can give you things that we're posting all day long as well. What's happening with earnings. I gave you all this on Twitter today. At open, 827, right? You pushed into 1444, right? You got to watch for the rejection. It's in the reaction. It's going to be key. Under the 200, it's very dangerous. What proceeded to happen here? This was free game. You pushed down, and then you broke what? You broke the 200 SMA as there as well. Boom, boom, boom. Perfect. We're timing those tops, and we're hopefully putting people in the opportunity to start making money. Also, too, the Discord link is down below, so check it out if you are interested. Again, when we look at what's happening, and congratulations to Discord, guys, you've been absolutely slaughtering it, right? We look at what's happening here. It's been nothing short of great over the past few days, right? Absolutely fantastic. Massive gains across the board. You guys are killing it. Like I always say, it's not about joining a Discord and making money off rip or just following signals. It's about putting in the work to make money, right? Putting in the work to understand what to be trading. Where's the opportunity, right? And ultimately taking advantage of all those opportunities. Jameis, again, absolutely shredding. So shout out to Jameis. You're killing it, right? Now, what are we looking at here on the day and going into tomorrow? Now, I was looking at Amazon to see could we get some sparks here, right? That's what we wanted to see. Could Amazon get some love? Could Amazon, spark some good stuff from earnings? Because we really haven't had that. And so far, no, to say the least. Now we're going to put on our chart prime indicator so you can see that as well. And going throughout the day, when we go over some equities, you're going to be able to see where those levels lined up. The number one equity I want to mention right now is NVIDIA. Okay, so going to something like the daily, let's talk here. And this is probably one of the best setups. You're breaking below every major level here now. The 410 level was probably the biggest level. And I can bring this down just a little bit so you can kind of see that 410 level right here. We've been bouncing a lot as of recent, like 4 or 5 bounces here on the daily time frame alone. Going to the shorter time frames, it's a lot more clear. But this 410 down to around 402 level is major. and Nvidia is kind of cutting through it like butter. Here on the after hours, after Amazon reported and kind of came down now, you're seeing Nvidia get more weakness. Nvidia breaks 400, you're completing this head and shoulders and starting the descent. Target number 1 is around 386 to 385. Target number 2 is the 200 SMA around 350. It could rise, obviously, depending on how long this takes. 350, 355 is where it'll probably end up. Those are the levels I'm watching. If Nvidia rolls over here, I'm going over this equity because it's gonna line right back up with the Nasdaq, and Nasdaq's gonna give out. Nasdaq, your level here, you zoom out and you have a little bit of like resistance here, but your next level, in my opinion, comes down to 13.9 to 13.7. That's your next major level. I wouldn't consider it a demand zone, but that whole area is going to be a tough area to get through. So that's your next level, and I think that could be tested as early as tomorrow, maybe even Monday morning. Now, a few things to realize now. Earnings are, I don't want to say they're over, but some of the biggest earnings are done. Now, next week on Thursday, we have Apple earnings, and we all know that I anticipate Apple to be absolutely treacherous. Now, I mentioned in yesterday's video as well. I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but Apple's doing terrible. It's doing awful. I said yesterday you break the 200 SMA, it's wraps. Now from there you came back into those lows we mentioned, 167.5. The 2-hour time frame can highlight this as well. Now you retested like a little bit of a bear flag and pushing back down. You also have that chart prime level again mentioned right here, which again we cut through, and there was no more support down here either. Again, this is bad news bears. So again, I like to highlight some of these equities so we can see, because ultimately if we're looking at the SPY, what does the SPY do? It's just tracking the movement of the biggest stocks that we're looking at there. So a good rule of thumb to notice is if Apple's getting hammered, if Amazon, Facebook, etc., the Magnificent Seven names are getting hammered, high possibility SPY's going to feel a lot of that pain. So these are things we definitely need to be looking at. We also are looking at something what's happening here with VIX. Now, we look at VIX in particular, you're seeing kind of some of the pain here as well. You're back above 20, we're inching on our way up. Above 23, above 24, that's when I believe things get very, very scary and things could start to bleed out a lot more and a lot more volatility. Another almost 2% down day as well on the Nasdaq. Also, if you're wondering about chart prime, listen to this. And before we go any further, I want to give a special shout out to the sponsor of this video and a new sponsor of the channel, Chart Prime. But what if I could tell you now we have something in a tool that's going to be able to give you all of our key levels or a little bit of a cheat sheet going into these as well. And then also breaking down massive levels you need to be watching for buyers and sellers in between the charts. Or what if you can also go into your chart, quickly identify the patterns that are there, whether it be broadening wedges, head and shoulders, double tops, or anything along those lines. And one thing that you guys know is that I'm never going to stand behind a product that I wouldn't use myself. That's why every single day I am officially going to be using Chart Prime and these specific indicators to help us on the live streams and in the daily videos to make charting quicker, faster, and of course giving us advantage to see things that we may have missed that AI will no longer be missing. And this is just one chart. If you're interested, the link will be down below, and if you use our code, you'll get 30% off every single month. Make sure you check them out. And if you have questions, feel free to comment down below. Let's get back to the video. Okay, so as we're jumping back in, going into tomorrow, I didn't think this was even a possibility in the short term, but it is. So where I believe the next big level here on Qs, as we're bear flagging, is pushing down to 338, 339.5 roughly. That's the next target here. I'd be following that specifically on the Qs. SPY, your target has to be 410.5, but it's looking like you might start breaking below that, okay? So those are things that look very scary there as well. I also think we need to be paying close attention to IWM. IWM, I've been posting this on Twitter a lot. You're already at 2022 lows, okay? This is one of the best metrics of identifying risk on versus risk off, and it doesn't look like we're kind of even close to stopping. It looks like more pain is actually on the horizon here as well. If you break lows here, again, I think mid caps, small caps are going to get destroyed. It's been one of the best indicators overall of weakness across the board, even if you're trying to kind of go against the trend, which I think for a little bit maybe I was. But again, we look at the major levels we've been following on Nasdaq, and I think we painted the most clear answer. We told you when you broke below 14.6, volatility would occur and it would come in quick. And what do you know? Within one day, you're dropping almost 500 points on the Nasdaq from breaking that specific level. To the upside, it was again that 15.4 level, but again, you never got the breakout of that area or that region. SPY, the level we talked about, breaking and holding below 200 SMA. Within 2 days of having that, you went from 423 down to basically 411, right? Very quick, volatile, weak action on SPY. Going into the dollar, going into what's happening with oil. Oil is, we're going to talk about that here in a sec. But again, the dollar, we've seen us break these massive key levels, but then we just bounce back. In my opinion, signifying that it's very hit or miss here on the dollar. You're not following necessarily TA to the tick, but you're definitely just range bound here now. But one thing we need to be identifying and need to be thinking about, and it's something that maybe even I wasn't considering here, where I might have a little bit of a flaw here, right? So you go in, you look at this flag. It looks like you're kind of getting a bull flag here on the DXY, wanting to push him out 107.2. Now, if we see this danger continue with what's happening in the Middle East, and we see this continue to escalate and the market to react the way it is, again, I don't think it looks good for the market. And I definitely think DXY will react accordingly, breaking us back to the upside. Now, again, one area that I've been looking at that we're not seeing necessarily bearish action is here on oil. You've been hovering around 82, 82.5, which is our key level here. Again, you are making, relative in the short term, lower high here. And I don't really consider this a bull flag. But what I'll say is you're hanging on here. And if the stuff in the Middle East escalates, again, the target is for oil to go back into $100. If that happens, inflation numbers will experience pain. Personal opinion. We also saw the housing market continue to move up as well. We covered that yesterday. So again, kind of a perfect storm here. Kind of an area of danger. We continue to look at yields and we look at what's happening here. You're just ranging, sitting at highs as well, 30, 10, 5, 2. And you have people like Yellen saying that what's happening here, yes, Janet Yellen, the charge of the Treasury, right? They're saying, oh, this is normal behavior. This is okay because every other country, they have their yields rising as well. This is stupid. This is dangerous. And we have kind of incompetent people right now listening and kind of in charge. I would say the only person that actually seems logical with what they're doing is Jerome Powell. I'm going to tell you that right now. If he decides to raise rates here, I don't agree with it. But what I will say is that we're not in a healthy area right now. And there's a lot of potential for more downside now based on how things are escalating. And now that we're losing these major levels here on the Nasdaq, SPY, and everything in between. Again, you have 300 more points of downside at the bare minimum here on the Nasdaq if you stay below the 200 SMA. Again, and I've been saying this as well. On SPY, we had to see multiple days below, right? You had one drop here, we came back up, and then we proceeded to drop. The Nasdaq, it would be surprising if we drop straight through this into 13.9. That would be shocking. I wouldn't expect that behavior. But based on the weakness, based on earnings coming out, it wouldn't be as surprising now. And again, we look at the broad market, Q's down almost $7 on the day, another 2% drop on the day there. We look at SPY, down around 1.2%, another $5 drop there as well. Again, this just smells like a lot of weakness, and it doesn't look like this is a trap in comparison to some of the other setups that we have had. But again, what am I saying right now? We have a lot of equities that look good. I'm going to keep you updated on Twitter with some of the stocks I'm liking. I'll have some posted later tonight. But I want you guys to, right now more than ever, you got to be waiting, being patient here. The names that I'm liking the most for potential downside. Number one, I love Meta for the downside. What you're looking for here, keep it simple, right? We're looking at the same levels over and over and over and over. If you watched the live stream today, then you caught some of this action. You want to see a break and hold below 289. Below 289, you're targeting 279, 280 roughly. That's one of the best plays there right now. Amazon coming out of tomorrow. The big question here, and this highlights the more area of concern. Is Amazon going to break below the 200 SMA here? If Amazon breaks below 200 SMA, you're going to start experiencing pain. It's going to be ugly, right? You're already bear flagging. You're already moving down in the after hours. Now, you can also see the key level coming in from chart prime at 114. So that's going to be our next level that I'd be watching. If you break the 200 SMA and hold, you're moving into 114. A lot of weakness there. But again, a lot of money-making opportunities, especially in the long term. Apple. Again, Apple, very, very weak. Now, when I'm looking at Apple, I'm telling you right now, thank God for chart prime. It's again pointing out some of our levels here. The next target will be around 157, 158. But when I zoom in here, you're going to get a little bit more of the understanding of why. In my opinion, this is all very illiquid. You basically moved up from 157 all the way up into highs around 197 pretty easily, just stair-stepping back and forth. No real consolidation. The consolidation around 171 and 174 was your real last line of defense besides the 200 SMA. So when we go to like the 15-minute, you can see it's just continuation. VWAP, slap. You're pushing back into levels, rejected. You push back into 171, rejected. So again, I do believe the weakness continues, especially with Apple. You already know my stance on their earnings. I think it's going to be brutal. So again, I like Apple very strongly to the downside as well. It's even, in my opinion, if you're going dated, I even like shorting through earnings. Personal opinion, call me crazy, but that's what I'm looking at there. Tesla. When I look at Tesla, and again, a lot of these charts I'll be posting on Twitter tonight. Tesla, you broke below the 200 SMA on the daily. One area that we haven't been discussing a lot is the 200 SMA on the weekly, okay? So when I bring up the weekly, as we see here, you're breaking below that level as well right here at 207 roughly. Now, I posted in Discord this idea, but you start breaking back below these lows, in my opinion, you're testing 202 and then 200. But ultimately, when we look at Tesla, another big thing we're looking at the level of illiquidity here. You basically moved all the way up from essentially 177, 180 in a straight line. This whole level here, again, I'm not going to ever sugarcoat anything. Everyone says I'm a perma bull, but I'm telling you, when I get bearish, I get bearish. We look here, this is all very, very, very illiquid. So we could start dropping in our hurry here on Tesla, and a lot of bad news is surrounding these guys as well. Again, I hope you understood some of the stuff we were talking about here. If you have questions, comment down below. I like to answer and communicate with you guys at all points in time. And again, the community here, it's not just about making money for us on our end. We're trying to help you guys learn along the way as well. So again, I encourage you guys to put in the effort, put in the time, ask the questions, and we will hopefully help you get along your way and help you as much as possible. Have a good one, traders.